Take a look at this chart showing global population distribution over time. If we rewind to just 100 years ago, the urban fraction, down here at the bottom, accounted for barely 2 out of every 10 people. The vast majority of humanity lived in rural areas. Move the timeline to the present day, and the statistics have inverted. Urbanites will account for 70% of the global population. We are rapidly approaching a massive demographic ceiling. The total global population is currently predicted to top out around 10 billion people. This growth won't be evenly distributed. The vast majority of these 3 billion additional people will move into the urban centers of the world's poorest nations. To figure out how we accommodate that many people without stripping the earth bare, we have to look back. We need to see how humans engineered their way past the physical limits that held back our very first settlements. 10,000 years ago, humanity faced its first real bottleneck, the constant search for calories. As hunter-gatherers, our ancestors were forced into a cycle of perpetual movement just to track down enough food to survive. Early agricultural techniques and selective breeding offered a temporary fix, allowing people to raise food instead of chasing it. But those first farming villages still had to relocate every few years, the moment the local soil became depleted. The breakthrough for permanent settlement arrived about 5,000 years ago with the invention of large-scale irrigation and soil tilling. For the first time, a single piece of land could yield a reliable, long-term surplus of food. That surplus triggered a social chain reaction. Because it was no longer necessary for every single person to farm, citizens were free to develop specialized trades, crafting tools and goods that had nothing to do with food production. Having excess food and manufactured crafts opened up the possibility of long-distance trade, and commerce requires heavy infrastructure, ports, ships, and roads to actually move the inventory. Building and maintaining all of those new systems required an immense amount of physical effort. This created a massive permanent labor drain, pulling countless people from the countryside into emerging cities to chase the available work. This photo gives you a good sense of what we consider a crowded modern street. Believe it or not, some cities in 2000 BC operated at population densities nearly twice as high as modern-day Shanghai or Calcutta. That extreme ancient density was caused by a strict physical constraint. Without mass transit or internal plumbing, the entire population had to live within walking distance of the few clean water sources available. They were also boxed in by the threat of violence. The land area of early cities was rigidly restricted by the absolute necessity of living behind fortified defensive walls. The Roman Empire was the first to meaningfully stretch those boundaries. They engineered massive aqueducts to deliver fresh water from miles away. But modern cities as we recognize them only took shape during the Industrial Revolution, when we finally learned to deploy new technology on a mass scale. To keep swelling populations from succumbing to disease or fire, municipalities established dedicated centralized departments. They dug vast underground sanitation networks by hand and organized massive fire and police forces. Then came sprawling road networks and constant electricity distribution. Suddenly, you didn't have to live next to the river to have light and water. Mass-scale infrastructure effectively dissolved the city's ancient boundaries, allowing it to expand into the sprawling, mechanized grid we live in today. That industrial sprawl model has a fatal flaw today. It consumes too much surface area, threatening to destroy the very land that produces the goods and services keeping our population alive. As we approach a population of 10 billion, we have to find ways to provide adequate food, sanitation, and education for everyone without further expanding our physical footprint. Feeding that many people while protecting the land requires us to stop clearing more nature for crops. This forces food production to turn inward, reclaiming city centers through vertical skyscraper farms, rooftop gardens, and repurposed vacant lots. Our energy infrastructure will follow suit. The grid will fracture away from massive, centralized plants in favor of multiple decentralized sources of local renewable energy. Even our architecture will abandon resource-heavy single-family homes to climb upward. We're looking at vertically integrated skyscrapers that contain housing, workspaces, and essential daily services all inside a single structure. Approaching the 10 billion mark triggers a metamorphosis of the human habitat into a network of highly connected, self-sufficient eco-hubs.